This is everything that you need to know about the new ROG Ally X. That was just announced officially, and we have all the specs and all the information that you need to know about the pre-order for what is going to be released later this month. The Asus ROG Ally X is not the Ally 2. It is just a spec bump from the original. It has the same exact processor. In fact, this bump up isn't even as significant as the Steam Deck to the OLED Steam Deck. But there are a ton of updates to the ROG Ally X, so we're just gonna go through every single thing that is an improvement and why I'm kind of tempted for the first time to pick up a different handheld device other than the OLED Steam Deck. So let's jump into it. Okay, probably the number one thing that everybody has complaints about on these handheld PCs is battery life. The battery life on all of them, except the OLED Steam Deck, is horrendous. It's offensive, in fact, as you can just watch the battery life drain to a withering nothing as its life is leaving its body and you're frantically trying to figure out what you're gonna do about it. Because the whole point of a handheld is to be out and about and doing stuff like on an airplane or whatever. But if you're stressing out the whole time that your battery's gonna be dead in 45 minutes or an hour, what are you gonna do about that? I digress. The point here is that they took the 40 watt hour battery and amplified it, doubled it, X'd it. Now there is a giant 80 watt hour battery inside of this little handheld device, which is incredible, great. But what's even better about that is the performance gains that they're gonna be able to do, because now they're not so worried about the battery dying in 10 minutes. They're actually increasing the power profiles by a couple watts, which is actually going to be a noticeable difference in performance for sure. So like performance mode increased from 15 watts to 17 watts. So like every profile is just gonna get a couple wattage bump. The second largest spec bump is the RAM upgrade. They're taking it from the 16 gigs of RAM to 24 gigs of RAM, plus it's the LPDDR5 7500 megahertz. This is the fastest RAM that you could put inside a handheld device like this. Having 24 gigs of RAM is actually gonna really be a noticeable difference in a lot of games because it's gonna allow 16 gigs for the system and then 8 gigs for VRAM. And if you noticed, there's some VRAM hungry games coming out. The storage is getting increased to a baseline of 1 terabyte. I think they actually are doing this so that they can sell this device for a higher dollar amount and just cut out the lower end products, which is kind of what all the handhelds are doing because they just cannot compete with the Steam Deck. I think it's kind of smart, but it's also kind of a bummer. I would rather buy the baseline and then just upgrade the storage myself for cheaper in the future if I wanted to. But I guess that also means you could buy like a 4 terabyte SSD and just shove it in this thing and just, I don't know, get every game ever on your handheld device. Be kind of great. On one side, I kind of like that they went the full size SSD as opposed to these little miniature guys, because those ones cost a little bit more and they're not as readily available as the typical size that just goes into like a PS5 or a computer. But at the same time, I don't know, I wasn't too concerned about buying a small one. Plus it saves so much space putting a small one in it that I'm not totally sure what their thought process was other than cost saving on their side, but also cost saving on our side. If you want to upgrade, you can, and it's cheaper. And there are larger capacity full-size SSDs as opposed to the small guys. So there's not much of a downside. There are many upsides to it. So I guess good job, thanks. It'd also be interesting to see if other manufacturers will start going to full size as well. I kind of think not. Just from a size perspective, I don't think it makes sense. Moving on. The third noticeable difference is the ergonomics and design. It is relatively the same, but if you really look closely, it's kind of all different. They've improved all of the ergonomics. Every single button is different and they've upgraded all of it, but that comes at a weight increase, not because of all the pieces that they upgraded. They in fact made all of that lighter weight because the double the size battery increased the weight so much that they had to shave weight on everything else. but that didn't come at a compromise. In fact, those are all better. Everything about holding it, pressing all the buttons, everybody unanimously is saying it feels better. They like every single element of it better. And the weight increase, nobody seems to care. It doesn't seem to be that big of a difference to be a noticeable downside. The fans and cooling system have been totally revamped. They're new, smaller, lighter fans with a redesigned air tunnel for better cooling and less noise. So that's good. The ROG Ally was one of the Windows handheld PCs that already was a little bit better on the noise side. So if this somehow got it smaller and lighter and quieter, we can't complain. But I don't think there's been enough hands-on experience for that to be 100% certain. But I'm sure it's either gonna be very similar or maybe marginally better, which is great. They also added an entirely new vent that pushes air right into the screen and cools the screen down. But I didn't think that was like a major issue that people were having, and maybe that helps something else. Maybe the screen getting really hot was causing other issues in heating other places in the device because, you know, it's right there, touching everything behind it. So maybe by cooling the screen, it's actually keeping the entire device cool. Either way, keeping things cool is cool. The fourth thing that they have actually not changed is the display, the screen. It's the same 7-inch, 48 to 120 hertz VRR IPS display as the original Ally. They kept the same screen. I guess the screen was nice, probably didn't need an increase, other than if they really wanted to bump it up to an OLED, but you know, cost, blah, 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 all the things. They probably just stuck with the same screen, keeps manufacturing simple, keeps costs down. They can use those same screens in the ROG Ally, as now they will push them into the ROG Ally X, maybe sharing profits, not to us, that's for sure. They're just making more money for themselves. Good job, guys. Which brings us to the other thing that hasn't changed at all, which is the chipset. The AMD Z1 Extreme APU is verbatim exactly the same as the original one. There's no difference. But this does not mean it's not gonna perform better. It is absolutely going to perform better because they're going to increase the wattage that's getting pumped into this bad boy. And that additional RAM is going to help this little bad boy out. So we're gonna be able to juice out a lot more out of this APU. But again, just like I was saying with the OLED Steam Deck, where they completely upgraded the APU inside the OLED and made it way better, that is not what is happening here. It's the same exact chipset. But the other benefits will help it out. So it is what it is, you know? Controls, they've updated all of them. And across the board, it seems that everybody believes that this is an improvement of life on every aspect. The D-pad is better, the buttons are better, the left and right triggers are bigger and better. What else is there to say? I don't think we need to go on and on about this. They just improved all the buttons, and we all like that. That's great. Because some people were having issues, especially with the thumbstick, that they just didn't really like it. It didn't feel very premium, and they're all agreeing that this new version of that is much better. Plus, they're doing a little bit of a nod where you can pull that out and there's a screw, and you can take it out and then you can make anything you want, like 3D print a different stick for yourself. And we really like to see, even if it's something little like that, that the people manufacturing, designing, and creating this are really actually taking input from the community. They're really taking note and caring about what things that people might want to mod or make better on a device that's being made by a giant company. So the fact that they got that pushed through means to me that there are people on the team who actually care about the end user, the tinkerers and the people that like to modify and make these devices better on their own. A lot of companies shy away from that. So somebody at the company is championing this. We see you and thank you. Keep it up. The power button also has a fingerprint button with a ring for easier identification. Because no one's been able to really test any of these things, except it kind of looked like Linus Tech was able to kind of test all of these things, and he had predictions about how well everything is going to perform on it, because I think he tested them. Predictions are probably gonna be very spot on. So make sure to watch his video if you want some like very real life predictions. Will be minor performance improvements expected with up to 5 to 10% better frame rates in some games. Thermals are predicted to be lower temperatures by 5 to 10 degrees. Both of these things sound great. Some concerns to consider, and these I actually think are very valid, except there is a caveat at the end that I'll explain as well. But warranty issues. It really does matter what companies you're buying these, $800 devices from. Because if they're not going to help you out when you start having issues, then you're kind of stuck with a really expensive paperweight. On the flip side, Valve is incredible. From experience, I'm the one who wanted to upgrade my SSD in my OLED Steam Deck. I ripped the whole thing apart, broke something, put it all back together, and it was dead. Nothing. Couldn't fix it for days and days and days. Their support worked through it with me, trying to help me, and then they were like, "You're right, it's broken." They didn't even say, "You broke it." And I did. Obviously, I broke it. I ripped it apart and tried to do something, and I screwed it up. But they were kind enough to say, "Yeah, you're right, it's broken. Send it back to us and we'll send you a new one." And that's exactly what they did. I sent it to them, and then they just sent me a brand new OLED Steam Deck, like no questions asked. They knew what I was doing. I mean, that's really good, Valve. Thank you. But it sounds like people are having the opposite experience with Asus. They seem to be not very helpful, and apparently they're like, "Oh yeah, oh gosh, guys, sorry, we hear you. We're gonna do better." But it doesn't matter what people say, they need to start doing it. So we have to just wait and see how they start treating people and what they're doing to help them with their warranties and issues with these devices. Hopefully they get better. But it's kind of like a gamble. If you get stuck and then they don't help you, you're kind of stuck. So that's just something to consider when buying something like this. Okay, so is the ROG Ally X worth buying? It seems that everybody is agreeing if you already have the ROG Ally or the Legion Go or something that is comparable to the power of this device, it is just a little bit better. So it might not be worth upgrading. But for myself, I don't have any of those devices. I've been waiting and waiting, just hoping that some sort of more powerful handheld could come along that could help me in between the waiting period, as I just am so eager to get a Steam Deck 2. Because the new games that are coming out, the Steam Deck OLED is struggling a little bit. Still very impressive. And here's why I might consider buying this. It's because they didn't upgrade the APU. They kept it the same. They launched and things were not super great, but now the software engineers have been working on it for a year and it's gotten to a much better place. And all of that work is going to translate into the X. It also will benefit from all that work that they were able to do. And we're going to keep going into the next year as they keep developing and toning this in and making it better and better and better. Because as we all know, the worst part of PC handhelds is Windows. And so I think as much time as they can get just fine-tuning all the hardware that they put into these devices, the better they will become. I think just now, this device is at a point where it's a lot better to use on a daily use case as opposed to what it was when it first came out. And all of that is going to wrap into this mid-gen update because they're not putting a brand new APU in it. And then the second thing is the increased battery life. I just didn't want to get stuck with a more powerful machine, which means I'm gonna wanna pick it up to play AAA title games and max it out so that I can get that performance. But if that means I get like 45 minutes of battery life, that kind of sucks. Like if I have to hop on an airplane and I wanna play a game, I don't want like 45 minutes and then I'm like, oh, dead in the water. Can't use this device anymore. Then I'm just gonna wish I had my Steam Deck where I could play like 4 hours of a game. But with the increased battery life, the increased performance, and it's gonna get double plus some of battery life, that might be enough. So those are kind of the main reasons why I am flirting with the idea of buying this device and adding it alongside my OLED Steam Deck. I'd love to know what all of you are thinking. Is this something that you're excited about, or do you not really care that they're doing like a little bit of a spec bump across the board on the ROG Ally because the other one is gonna be really cheap probably? There's already been really fantastic deals on the ROG Ally, and when they drop this one, I'm assuming there's gonna be some even better deals on those, which makes it almost more tempting just to go get one of those as opposed to the new one. There's so many of these things, guys. It's hard to keep up. But anyways, that's everything that you need to know about the ROG Ally X. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. Are you gonna get one? Do you want one? Do you not care? Are you just more excited about a new Steam Deck 2 like I am? But let's be real, that's not coming anytime soon. That's it. Later, guys.